There will be no STI for the 5th generation WRX, but there is now a consolation prize, and that's what I'm driving today. This is the 2024 Subaru WRX TR. The TR trim acronym has been used before, but it used to stand for tuner ready, and it was effectively the base trim. It was stripped of a lot of the things that Subaru knew Impreza WRX owners were going to modify or swap out anyway. Basically a blank slate and priced accordingly. This one is positioned near the top of the trim lineup with only the GT ahead of it, and it is also priced accordingly. It's effectively an STI Lite with a few key upgrades, so let's check that out. Now, we have covered this generation WRX prior to the TR trim coming out as well and compared it to some competitors. Check those out and please subscribe to this channel. There are not very many exterior differentiators for the TR trim because it doesn't even have its own badge, and every WRX has the hood scoop, every WRX has the quad tip exhaust. So what really sets this apart and what's been grabbing attention, I'll tell you when I'm out on the road driving this, is of course the Brembo brakes, and those red calipers really make sure that you notice them and that you know that this is something a little different from your run-of-the-mill WRX. Now, we also get exclusive 19-inch wheels on this trim. They are the largest wheels in the WRX lineup, and we can see they're paired with slightly lower profile tires. So we're going to talk in a couple of minutes about how that impacts ride quality. But for now, let's talk about this specific car. I love this iconic World Rally blue color. I think this is a perfect color for a WRX. If you are someone who took issue, as many did, with this black plastic side cladding that we've got on this latest generation, maybe you'd prefer to have it in black and sort of camouflage that a little bit, but I gotta say, I don't hate it. I actually don't think it looks bad, and it will help protect your paint. And you know, the WRX is a rally car. If it looks a little off-road capable, I don't think that that's a terrible thing. For now, let's check out inside the one other visible differentiator for the TR trim. It's got Recaro front bucket seats. Now, the front seats are heated on this trim, and the driver's seat is power adjustable, but the passenger's seat is not, and neither is the lumbar, power or otherwise. And it's a little firm and pretty substantial. I would like if I could adjust it a little bit. I feel like it's kind of pushing me out of the seat a bit. But it's a good reminder that this is just not a comfort first trim. That's just not the point of it. And I would not say that these seats are very comfortable. The bolstering is both stiff and substantial. The seats overall are very firm. Maybe they'll break in a little bit. I don't know. But for now, again, not comfort first. I do feel that they hold you in place nicely on back roads. If you're taking the twisty turnies kind of quickly, that's handy, and I think they'll be really good for autocross. The Ultra Suede is really not bad. I know I've said before on this channel, and I stand by it, that I prefer a seating surface that you can wipe off, but I don't hate this, and I like that the headrests, at least, those are definitely a wipeable surface. That feels like an area that could get dirty easily and be hard to clean, so I appreciate that. I also really like that they've matched the color scheme and the materials and everything in the rear seat. That's a nice touch. Speaking of materials, steering wheel cover is not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I also actually really like this faux carbon fiber trim inside the doors. There's not too much of it. It's pretty tasteful. Now you'll notice we do not have a moonroof on this trim. That's a weight-saving measure. That puts headroom at 39.8 inches front and 36.7 inches rear. You get more up front than in the Civic Type R, Golf R, or GR Corolla, but a little bit less in the second row. Legroom is substantially better in this than most competitors at 43.1 inches front and 36.5 rear. Of course, if cargo volume is important to you, you're going to want to take a close look at the hatchbacks in the class. The Civic Type R, the Golf R, or the GR Corolla in that order. The Elantra N also has more trunk volume than this does. So we've covered the visible things that set the TR apart. So now let's talk about what's different and what's not in terms of performance components. First of all, the engine is the same across the WRX lineup. So it gets the same 2.4-liter turbocharged boxer engine, makes the same 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque as every other trim. The TR is manual only, while the GT is automatic only. That gets the Subaru Performance transmission. So the only ones where you can actually pick your transmission are Premium and Limited. You can either get the 6-speed manual we have here or the automatic that you get in the GT. But TR is manual only, and of course, all the WRXs are all-wheel drive only because Subaru. And yes, I do know about the BRZ. I actually reviewed it for this channel a couple years ago, so check that video out as well. The clutch feels good, nice weight to it, and I like the bite point. I also really like the feel of the brake pedal. It feels substantial and linear. Now, the TR does have stiffened springs and dampers, and you really feel that. It's a very stiff ride. Combine it with the lower profile tires and the larger wheels, it's another reminder that this trim in particular is not about comfort. The GT trim does have electronically controlled dampers, so I suppose it must have a softer comfort setting if that's something that interests you. The WRX is also really noisy on the highway. The boxer engine is not known for being quiet, but you're also getting a lot of wind noise and road noise and tire noise in this. It's very noticeable, and I'm not actually finding any evidence that there's acoustic laminated glass or noise cancellation or anything for the higher, more comfort-oriented trims. So it's something to be aware of, something to get used to. You do really notice it. I really noticed it on a recent road trip because I actually had to turn my audiobook up when I got on the highway to be able to hear it. A very distinct volume difference between driving around town, stoplights, and cruising on the highway. The steering is very light and quick and direct, so you wind up making a lot of adjustments, especially at highway speed. And I actually found if I put lane keeping on and just took my hands off the wheel and watched it, I could see it correcting constantly. So that's an interesting thing. Makes for a bit of a busy experience when you combine that with the stiffness and the noise on the highway in particular. They have gone back to a sort of normal style turn signal action. This generation had introduced the BMW style turn signals, and that is no longer a thing, which I think a lot of people are going to be happy with. The STI famously had DCCD, driver controlled center diff, which gave the driver the opportunity to determine the power distribution between the front and rear wheels with a little control down here. This just has a little blank spot where that would have been. But there are already people out there working on making that modification for this generation WRX. So if that's important to you, hang in there. We've got both a USB-C and a USB-A port up here, and they're both data transmitting. So it's nice in that if you only have one kind of cord with you, you're not SOL. It's annoying if you have two phones plugged in at once, because the system can kind of get confused about which one it really wants to be running off of. Add in wireless Apple CarPlay and you've got 3 different things cycling through. It can get a little bit tricky. One solution is to make use of the rear charging ports. There's one USB-C and one USB-A at the back of this center console as well, and those are charging only. So that's your alternative option. Now this 11.6-inch tablet-style touchscreen, this is standard, and it's nice to see one big display instead of the traditional 2 separate screens that we're used to seeing in Subarus. You do still get that split screen effect sometimes. For example, when you're in reverse and the rear backup camera turns on, that'll be just up here, and other things going on down here, so it's kind of funny. One thing about this big screen, you'll notice it's very flat, and these hard climate controls, these are also really flat and they're in the same plane. The problem with this is that when the sun is at the right angle, or maybe the wrong angle, you get a lot of glare off of this expanse, and it can be blinding. The native Subaru infotainment system can look a little bit dated, especially some of the font, but if you're like me, you're just going to be in Apple CarPlay anyway, or if you're like Matt, Android Auto. The anchor buttons at the bottom of CarPlay here, even right now I'm missing it, they're really small, and my husband complained about that because he felt that you have to be very precise, and if you're bouncing around on the stiffened suspension of the TR, that can be really sort of hard to do while in motion. One other thing about the TR, it's got the 11-speaker Harman Kardon sound system. On the safety front, the big news is that the Subaru EyeSight suite of advanced driver assistance features is now standard even with the manual. So that means you get things like lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control. I did make use of adaptive cruise control on a weekend road trip with this thing, and it was pretty cool the way that it worked. For example, you are going to have to shift gears for it. It doesn't do that by itself. I thought that when I put the clutch in, it might cancel it, but no, as soon as it was back in gear, it automatically resumed at the speed that I had set it at, which I thought was pretty impressive. I have read that in an automatic emergency braking situation, the car will stall, but I haven't experienced that myself. So let's review. That large tablet-style touchscreen is standard. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard. The EyeSight suite of driver assistance systems is now standard, and even the engine is standard. So you're getting all of that on the base WRX, which starts just under $33,000. This one costs a lot more, and as we've seen today, you could argue that they're charging you about 10 grand extra to make it less comfortable. If you're making that argument though, you're probably not in the target audience for this vehicle, because the target audience is going to argue they're charging you extra to make it a lot cooler. So for that target audience, the sticker price on this vehicle, including destination, is $42,775. That undercuts the Civic Type R and the Golf R by about $3,000 to $4,000. It's more expensive than the GR Corolla Premium, but it's less expensive than the GR Corolla Circuit Edition. And then the Hyundai Elantra N, which is also, of course, worthy of mention, that's the cheapest in the bunch, starting right around the base price of the WRX. These are all enthusiast cars. They've got whole communities built up around them, and that means that they're subject not just to data, but also to lore and to lots and lots of opinions based both on emotion and on information. And of course, they're drivers' cars. So if you're considering this or any of its competitors, you're gonna wanna drive them all and see which one really does it for you. A quick final note, I've been using MSRP in this review because factors like supply and demand and markup, those are temporary and often geographical, and so they just don't really have a place in this video, but that doesn't mean that they're not critical elements of your shopping journey. They are. CarGurus is still here for you. If you head over to our website, you can take advantage of deal ratings, pricing history, and full written reviews on this and every model that we've talked about today. Just please subscribe before you go.